In 1997, BMW paid a small fortune to put their newest motorcycle in a James Bond film. Pierce Brosnan and Michelle Yeoh jumped a 565-pound BMW Cruiser over a helicopter on a rooftop in Tomorrow Never Dies. BMW thought they were buying a launch pad for their assault on the American motorcycle market. Turns out they were buying a tombstone, because that motorcycle, the BMW R1200C, was the opening move in one of the most ambitious and most doomed strategies in motorcycle history. BMW, the company that made some of the best touring and adventure bikes on the market, decided they were going to walk into Harley-Davidson's backyard and steal their customers, not by copying Harley, by out-engineering them. And the crown jewel of that strategy was a chrome-drenched, full-dress luxury cruiser called the R1200CL. Its owners would eventually nickname it the Chromehead. BMW would eventually pretend it never existed. This is that story. To understand why BMW thought this was a good idea, you have to understand what the American motorcycle market looked like in the mid-1990s. Cruisers dominated everything. By 1997, nearly 60% of motorcycles sold in the United States were cruisers. One company owned that space completely, Harley-Davidson. Harley was not just winning, they literally could not build bikes fast enough. Dealerships had long waiting lists. Some buyers were paying thousands over sticker price just to skip the line. According to Harley-Davidson's own buyer demographics, the median household income of a Harley owner rose from $38,000 in 1987 to $83,000 by 1997. These were not struggling bikers. These were doctors and lawyers and executives writing checks for motorcycles that were, on paper, technologically inferior to almost everything else on the market. BMW's leadership looked at this and saw the biggest opportunity in motorcycling. Dr. Michael Ganal, who ran BMW's motorcycle division at the time, calculated that BMW already covered a large portion of the global motorcycle market segments. Phil Capocella, BMW of North America's vice president for the motorcycle division, went on record in Cycle World magazine with the pitch. He argued that BMW could not be taken seriously unless they had entries in virtually every market segment, and the segment that was growing was not adventure bikes, and it was not sport bikes, it was cruisers. So BMW gave the assignment to a man named David Robb. And here is the first twist. Robb was not some Munich-born engineer in a lab coat. He was from Boston. He trained at the Art Center College of Design in California. He had been at BMW since 1984 and would go on to design the legendary R1200 GS adventure bike and the S1000RR superbike. This was not an amateur. This was arguably the most talented motorcycle designer BMW had ever employed. Robb's design brief was straightforward. Build the BMW of cruisers, not a Harley clone, not a Japanese knockoff. A cruiser that was unmistakably, proudly BMW. And on paper, that is exactly what he delivered. The R1200C debuted in 1997 with BMW's signature air-cooled Boxer twin engine, bored and stroked to 1,170 cubic centimeters. It got BMW's telelever front suspension, which eliminated fork dive under braking. It had a single-sided monolever shaft drive rear end. The passenger seat folded into a rider backrest with 3 adjustable angles that you could change on the move. The cylinder heads were chrome-plated, something no other BMW had ever done. And that chrome, combined with chrome everywhere else on the bike, is how the owner community eventually branded them. Chromeheads. Then in 2002, BMW pushed all their chips to the center of the table. They launched the R1200CL. CL stood for Cruiser Luxury. This was the full-dress, no-compromises version, a batwing fairing with 4 stacked headlights, a polarizing M-shaped notched windscreen, integrated hard panniers and a top case, cruise control, heated grips, an optional heated seat, and an AM/FM CD stereo system on the top-spec CLC trim. BMW priced the R1200CL at $15,990, which put it head-to-head with the Harley-Davidson Electra Glide and the Honda Goldwing. On paper, the engineering argument was overwhelming. Better suspension, better handling, shaft drive that required basically zero maintenance. BMW built the R1200CL like they built their cars. Every technical problem had a technical solution. The 800-watt alternator alone was massive for the era because all those heated seats and stereo systems needed serious electrical power. But here is where the whole thing starts falling apart, because BMW solved the wrong problem. The cruiser market was not about engineering. It never was. When a Harley rider rolls up to a stoplight on a Road King, the V-twin between their legs sounds like a small earthquake having an argument with itself. That sound is the product. That rumble, that mechanical heartbeat, that unmistakable potato, potato, potato exhaust note. It's identity, it's belonging. It's a membership card to a community that goes back over 100 years. The BMW Boxer twin sounds like a sewing machine arguing with a lawnmower. Reviewers consistently called the exhaust note muted and the engine strangled. And that's because BMW had taken their R1100 motor, bored it out, stroked it, and then reduced the compression and valve sizes to smooth everything out. They literally engineered much of the character out of the engine to make it refined, which is exactly what cruiser buyers did not want. Then there was the geometry problem. A Boxer twin has its cylinders sticking out sideways, left and right at hip level. Every proper cruiser in America uses forward-mounted floorboards so riders can stretch their legs out. On the BMW, the cylinder heads physically blocked that riding position. The engine was literally in the way of the ergonomics that defined the cruiser experience. You couldn't even do a proper feet-forward riding position without your boots hitting German engineering. And the power, oh, the power. The R1200CL made 61 horsepower at 5,000 revolutions per minute. That had to move 679 pounds of motorcycle, rider, passenger, and luggage. Meanwhile, the Honda VTX 1800 was making well over 100 horsepower. Even Harley's air-cooled twin-cam 88, which nobody ever accused of being a high-tech engine, made comparable peak power but delivered significantly more low-end torque and infinitely more character. Motorcycle News dynoed the CL at just 54 horsepower at the rear wheel. For a $16,000 motorcycle in 2003, that number was brutal. But all of those problems, the power, the sound, the ergonomics, the cultural mismatch, all of that could have been survived if BMW hadn't made one catastrophic engineering decision: the brakes. The R1200CL used BMW's integral anti-lock braking system with servo-assist. The servo unit was manufactured by a company called FTE Automotive. It is widely considered one of the most controversial braking systems ever fitted to a production motorcycle. Here is how a normal brake works. You squeeze the lever, pressure builds progressively, and the bike slows down proportionally to how hard you squeeze. Simple, predictable. It works on a $50 bicycle and on a $50,000 superbike. The BMW servo brake worked nothing like that. You would squeeze the lever, and the response was vague, delayed, almost absent. Then the servo motor would kick in and abruptly clamp all 3 brake discs with force that felt wildly disproportionate to your input. Modulation was unpredictable at best. The feel swung between barely there and full lockup, with almost nothing useful in between. Riders described it as genuinely terrifying. In a parking lot at low speed, the bike would lurch to a stop like it hit an invisible wall. In fast, sweeping corners where you might want to trail brake, there was zero confidence that the bike would respond proportionally to your input. The system did not just feel bad, it felt dangerous. And then the servos started failing. This is where the story goes from bad to catastrophic. The electric motor brushes inside the FTE servo unit wear out over time. This was not a rare failure. It was documented across BMW forums for years, affecting not just the R1200CL but the R1200GS, the R1200RT, and several K-series models that used the same system. When the servo died, residual unassisted braking was drastically reduced. Owners described pulling the lever all the way to the handlebar and still needing far more stopping distance than they would ever want on a 679-pound motorcycle in traffic. The servo module was buried underneath the fuel tank. You had to remove the tank just to access it. Bleeding the system required cycling through 6 separate hydraulic circuits. Over time, replacement modules from FTE became increasingly difficult to source. A small cottage industry sprang up around rebuilding dead units. A company called Module Master built a business doing exactly that, charging a few $100s to rebuild what BMW could no longer easily supply. Owners gave the brakes a nickname. The servo motor made a faint whining sound at idle that you could hear in a quiet garage. They called them the wheezy brakes. It was an affectionate name for a system that was slowly becoming the single biggest reason people walked away from these bikes at dealerships. BMW eventually admitted the problem by redesigning the entire system from the ground up for 2007. The new setup ditched the FTE servo completely, but that fix came too late for the Chromehead. The R1200CL was already dead. Now the James Bond connection deserves a quick detour because it perfectly captures the disconnect. For the Tomorrow Never Dies shoot in 1997, BMW supplied 15 R1200C motorcycles at $13,000 each. French stuntman Jean-Pierre Gouy performed the iconic rooftop helicopter jump for real, with a dummy strapped to his back, doubling Michelle Yeoh, no wires, no CGI on the bike. The spinning rotors were composited in afterward for safety. 12 of those 15 bikes were destroyed during filming. It was spectacular cinema. It sold the R1200C as an action bike, an adventure machine, a Bond bike. But the actual target customer for the R1200CL was a 55-year-old Electra Glide owner looking for a touring cruiser to ride with his wife on weekends. That person did not care about helicopter jumps. That person cared about the sound of the bike idling in a diner parking lot and whether the guys at the motorcycle meet would think it was cool. And on both counts, the BMW lost badly. The Cycle World review, when the R1200C first appeared, called the design boldly imaginative. Motorcycle.com's Calvin Kim, reviewing the R1200CL in 2003, was less diplomatic. He called the styling ugly. The four stacked headlights of the CL fairing and that M-shaped windscreen notch reminded some reviewers of a jumping spider's face. And the chrome that was supposed to be a selling point? Multiple owners reported it failing within 2 years. Peeling, pitting, discoloring. A chrome-covered motorcycle with bad chrome is a uniquely painful brand wound. The whole R1200C family, every variant from 1997 through 2004, sold just over 40,000 units worldwide according to BMW's own figures. That number covers the base C, the Avantgarde, the Independent, the Montauk, the CL, and the CLC combined. The smaller R850C variant sold in very limited numbers before being discontinued in 2000. And when BMW produced a final commemorative Montauk edition in Piedmont red and silver, they made only 350. Just 6 reached North America. All 6 went to Canada. Not a single commemorative Montauk was officially shipped to the United States. That's how the American cruiser experiment ended, not with a bang, not even with a whimper, but with 0 final bikes going to the country the whole project was designed for. In 2004, Dr. Herbert Diess, who had taken over as president of BMW Motorrad just a year earlier and would later lead both BMW AG and the Volkswagen Group, killed the entire R1200C line. His official reason was the unavailability of a suitable engine for further development. Translation: the air-cooled Boxer was never going to compete with a big American V-twin, and BMW had no replacement ready. Then BMW did something nobody expected. They stayed out of the cruiser market for 16 years. 16 years of watching Harley-Davidson and Indian Motorcycle fight it out. 16 years of knowing they had tried and failed. 16 years of learning from their mistake. When BMW finally came back in 2020, they brought the R18. And the R18 is, point for point, everything the R1200CL refused to be. Instead of a polite 61 horsepower Boxer, the R18 carries the biggest Boxer twin engine BMW has ever manufactured, 1,802 cubic centimeters, 91 horsepower, and 110 pound-feet of torque from basically idle. Instead of futuristic styling designed to scream innovation, the R18 was styled after the 1936 BMW R5. Pure retro, pure heritage, pure emotion, starting at $17,995. The R18 does not try to be the BMW of cruisers. It tries to be a cruiser that happens to be a BMW. That's the difference. And it only took 16 years and 1 failed product line for Munich to figure that out. Today, clean R1200CL examples sell for between $3,500 and $6,500. Depreciation has basically flatlined. The owner community at chromeheads.org still runs strong with over 9,000 discussion threads and 114,000 messages. These owners are not delusional. They know the bike had problems. But they will also tell you the telelever front end handled better than anything Harley-Davidson ever made, that the shaft drive was bulletproof, and that cruising at highway speeds the Boxer twins settled into a smoothness that V-twins simply could not match. And they are right about all of that. The R1200CL was a genuinely well-engineered motorcycle. It just was not the motorcycle anyone asked for. BMW assumed that if they built something technically superior, buyers would come to their senses and choose engineering over emotion. Over 100 years of Harley-Davidson heritage said otherwise. You cannot out-engineer a feeling. BMW spent 8 years and over 40,000 motorcycles learning that lesson. The Chromehead was not a bad bike. It was an intelligent answer to the wrong question. And sometimes the most expensive mistake a company can make is not building something that does not work. It is building something that works perfectly for a customer who does not exist.